Home buying in California? It's more than just a dream. Record prices, confusing rules, limited inventory. But you don't have to go it alone. Our team breaks it all down, step by step.
You can have situations where, let's say you put 10% down, you've got good credit.
20% of agents do about 80% of the business.
Having a high turnover of renters in an area.
You have more freedom there. You don't have to go through approval with anybody but the city.
Thousands trust us to make their home ownership dreams real. Meet the experts ready to guide you tonight.
Hey everybody, welcome to our official Bay Area home buying workshop. We're glad to have you on here. Just wanted to share a couple things here before we get started. We're excited to go through this with you. Whether you're a first-time home buyer or you're looking to expand your real estate portfolio, we're trying to make this a comprehensive workshop that's designed specifically to equip you with the knowledge and tools you need to navigate any real estate market confidently. So just a little background on your speakers today. I'll be speaking here today. Also, we'll have Shannon Ellison. I've been in this business for almost 30 years now. I'm a second generation realtor. We have a tremendous team that we work with, several agents on here that are here to help you and are all an extension of each other. So Shannon, who will be coming on here with me as well, is our senior agent on the team, and she's going to share a bunch of tips for you as well. So our goal is to get you out of here in 60 to 75 minutes tops. We're also going to have a Q&A at the end for any questions you might have at the end of the workshop, or if you want to just reach out after that as well. We also have a comment section right there. You can see little questions that come up here as well. Feel free to type your questions in there. We will get to them right away when we have that moment in the break, and Shannon or I will answer them for you. One very small but important request. If you find that this seminar is informative, please share it with others. Our future dates that we're going to have for this, we'll have those announced at the end of today. So let's break through a little bit of what we're going to be covering today as we come through here. This is a breakdown. We're going to talk about market conditions. There's a lot of questions out there with market conditions right now. What's going on? What's happening? Is the market going to crash? What's going on with all these interest rates, everything else. So we'll cover that. Also, we're going to talk about the new thing that went into effect almost a year ago now, which is the buyer commission section. And does the buyer actually have to pay the commission for the new rules that have come out? We're going to talk about some mortgage tips and tricks. We're going to talk about the home buying journey from start to finish. It's not just walking into a house and making an offer. So we'll guide you through what that process is. Negotiating the best deal, of course, is always important. So we'll hit that. So you have that best part. And then we're going to give you some good tips for evaluating properties and neighborhoods like a pro would. So you really know what the value of a property is with its location, which all of its pros and cons as well. And then the last thing that we'll cover before our final Q&A is going to be the common pitfalls and mistakes that are made by most home buyers and how to avoid those, which is most importantly. So let's get you kicked away and started with the very first one, which is understanding the market. So there's a couple few things on here because we've had a bunch of interesting markets ever since the pandemic. We've seen them all coming through. And one of the biggest questions that we have is the market correcting right now? And are we due for a crash? Or is it all just media hype? And that really is a piece that I want to touch base on. So I want to hit a couple things because here in the Bay Area, the market is a lot different than what we see nationally. And that's an important piece to understand and discuss as we go through this. So let me start with that. Nationally, the inventory is rising. Interest rates are higher than they've been the last few years. And many markets are actually shifting in favor of buyers. sellers are starting to compete nationally by lowering prices or offering incentives. Now, here locally in the Bay Area in Silicon Valley, it's a different story. So our inventory is actually down from 2 months ago. And this time of the year is usually right when it peaks. We see the highest inventory right now. So seeing it go down is very interesting at this point. So pending sales are up, not down. So there's more people actually buying homes. And our absorption rate is how you measure the health of an inventory in a market. It's the percentage of homes on the market that are selling at that period of time. It's really healthy. It's 48% for single family homes, which is 1 out of every 2 are selling. And then it's 32% for condos and townhomes. Both of those numbers point to a balanced market. To talk about those condos and townhomes at 32%, there's another story within there. 3-bedroom condos and townhomes are selling much faster than 2 bedrooms, which are selling much faster than 1 bedrooms, which is a direct reflection to first-time home buyers and the interest rates for what we're seeing. So that's the first piece. The second piece that I want to talk about is the prices. Are they falling? So nationally, they might dip slightly, right? Or they might just stay flat this year, depending on the area that you're in. But this is really important to understand. This is a normal correction. It's not a crash. And that's just something to understand. The market ebbs and flows. It goes up and down. And this is what we see. If we bring that even more so into Silicon Valley, June's average sales prices are nearly identical to what we saw in May. And May was when we saw all of the stuff with the tariffs and everything that happened and the reactions that happened to that. Prices are nearly identical. And year over year, prices are actually up. They're also up from January to today. So we're seeing very steady sales and we're seeing consistent pricing. So prices are holding and or in some areas, there's still multiple offers and we're seeing prices go up. So to clarify why all of this is happening, what are the factors here? So inventory is going up because there's more sellers that are entering the market right now. They're being more confident in putting their home on the market, but the buyer demand remains strong. So absorption rate, which in a really hot market was about 80%, is coming down to 50%, mainly because people are putting their homes on the market. But buyer demand is still there. Pending sales are still the same. And here's the thing that's really interesting. This is a very telling sign. Mortgage applications, which is the precursor to people that are going to be buying homes in the next 90 days, those are up from 20% since last year, up a total of 20%. And we're already looking at 9 weeks in a row that mortgage applications are up year over year. So more people are getting ready to enter the market and be ready for it, which again pushes competition and pushes demand. Inventory itself is still below the pre-pandemic levels, and mortgage delinquencies, which are really the piece that's the precursor to a market having a correction. It's when people have delinquencies in their mortgage and they can't afford to pay their mortgage. A lot of people have 3% interest rates right now. They have a lot of equity in their home. So mortgage delinquencies are really low. They're just above 4%. So there's no sign of a crash in any level going there. And then the economy, which is going to be our other precursor, is resilient. The S&P 500 is still up 5% year over year, from year to date, it's up 5%. And considering what had happened right after all that tariff mention and the V curve we had, that's a great sign. And unemployment in the Bay Area is just 3.6%, which is really low for both California and nationally. Now, while tech headlines and layoffs for those tech headlines have made their way through everything, and we've seen people pause because of that, demand for the AI and cybersecurity roles remain strong, and we're still seeing good employment in the Bay Area. So that's a piece that I wanted to get in there. The last piece I'll hit on there as the big picture. One of the reasons we kind of have a stalemate in the market right now, that's the best way to put it, even though sales are steady and inventory is rising a little bit, it's mostly consumer sentiment is, that's uncertainty in consumer sentiment. People don't know what's going to happen. They don't know what's going to happen with the tariffs. They're worried about certain things that are out there, but it doesn't have anything to do with fundamentals, because all of the housing fundamentals as far as absorption rate and inventory and where our numbers at is very, very strong. Inflation is stable. The job market's solid. mortgage distress is minimal to non-existent in our area. And so what we're really seeing is what we refer to as a normalization, because in our area, the market is usually crazy, for lack of a better term, very highly competitive, lots of offers, prices shooting way up. And so we're seeing that normalize, which is healthy, and it's not a meltdown. So this is something we do need to see. So what do you do as a buyer? And this is a big piece. This is a great window. This really is a time to act. With steady prices, less competition, you can actually negotiate and find value in certain places. There's going to be other areas where it's still competitive and you still have to compete in multiple offers. But when you're trying to find that value out there and you're trying to negotiate, focus on what's actually selling and not list prices. And that's a piece you'll want to understand. There's a big difference between the list price and the sales price. Sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's lower. The seller and that seller's agent pick the list price. It's not a number that's evaluated. They put something out there. So pay attention to what's selling to understand that. And don't let the headlines keep you on the sidelines. The Bay Area market remains steady and healthy, supported by a strong economy and, again, a resilient job market. So seasonal trends, I want to hit into those because schools really affect the market out here. When schools are out, there's more activity for both listings and purchases. But because of everything that we've seen with the tariffs and everything that was happening there, we are seeing kind of a shift. So when I say that, the second quarter is usually the period of time that we see the most activity. People putting their homes on the market, people buying homes. And since we have that steady normalization and a little bit of a stalemate right now, we're probably going to see that second quarter shift over to the third quarter. That's a piece that we should be experiencing. So watch that right now and watch the fall become possibly what the spring was. So that's a big piece that I wanted to talk about there. The piece about the Silicon Valley effect. I know I'm talking a lot about the market. I just want you guys to be informed on what we're here. So there's a little bit of history. Every single year, home prices move up from the beginning of the year to June. This year, there's no different. So they've still done the same thing. So I have a lot of data, a lot of statistics. I'll actually share a video afterwards to talk about those numbers with you so you can see that. And I won't go into great detail here for time's sake, but I will kind of show you what happens over time and how prices increase over time and what happens in Silicon Valley to those prices. So the thing to remember, it's all about supply and demand. Watch inventory, watch the absorption rate, and you can always follow our market updates on YouTube. We'll have a link for you here afterwards so you can follow that. Now, remember, with every area, there's always microclimates. Location, Mountain View and Sunnyvale kind of be in the center of things. When you come out from there, prices just and change. Schools, whether it's a one-bedroom condo or a single-family home in a prime location, those are always going to be the pieces. A story that I want to share, that's one of my favorite stories to share. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a second-generation realtor. My father was a realtor before me. And I remember when he was in business in Cupertino, there was a house that sold for $100,000. That was the highest sales price in Cupertino at that time, $100,000. And when that happened, literally the community and neighbors and everybody was in a panic because prices were so high that we couldn't support this. It couldn't happen. There's no way that we would go further from there. That same $100,000 house is worth over $4 million now. That $100,000 isn't even the earnest money deposit on that house. So we live in an inflation economy. Housing appreciates with inflation. There's all of those pieces that come together. So it's pretty amazing when you see that. It's one of the things to remember. Be comfortable when you're going in and understand that it's one of the best things that you can do. So we'll chat more about that when you want to and any questions that you might have on there. I see some questions popping up on there. Awesome. Shannon, thanks for jumping on that one. As we're in there, Shannon's behind the scenes. We'll see her on here in just a minute coming through. The next thing that I wanted to hit on there, thanks for learning about the market with me, is the commission. This has been a big piece out here because we've heard this all about the media. Do you have an extra cost when you buy a home of the commission to the agent? That is a kind of a big deal right now because historically, sellers have paid a percentage of commission to cover the cost of the buyer's agent. And there was a ruling last year in August to change that the buyers are responsible for that commission, for that percentage, whatever it is. So here's what you need to know about this, because this is the important part when it comes to this. You now have to have a written agreement with an agent when you go to look at a property, when you're going to start your home search. Just like a home seller, when they're going to sell their home, has to have a written agreement with the agent they choose to use. So the question about that agreement is, when does it need to be signed? And the answer for that is really before you even like open a door to see a home, before you go and tour anything, it has to be done before that. This even applies to like if you're reviewing virtual tours with an agent, if you're talking about things like additions, permits, disclosures, reports for a particular property, any of those things, you have to have a signed agreement legally with that realtor. That realtor can get in trouble if they don't have that. So before you sign that agreement, ensure that the agreement reflects the terms you've discussed. You can negotiate with that buyer's agent. Here's how much I choose to pay you. And then here's another thing, that buyer's agent can actually, with the offer, ask the seller to cover that cost. It can still be asked to be covered as part of the negotiations. So make sure you understand with that agent that you're going to go under contract with, what services they're providing and what value there is, because there's a lot of different options out there, from a discount level service to a complete white glove service and so forth. So while this change is significant change, it does ensure transparency. And it also is going to ensure professionalism throughout your whole home buying journey. So I think it's a good thing. So one important note, during open houses, this rule does not apply. So you can go into an open house. If an agent's there, you don't have to sign an agreement at all. So if you're just speaking with that agent in an open house, or you're asking about their services, again, no written agreement is required. So there are two different types of agreements. And so I want to talk about what these two different agreements are. Number one is the single property buyer broker representation agreement. You can see that over there on the screen to the left of me. This is great if you've never worked with the agent before and you just want to test the waters. So basically you can sign a form that says, you're my agent for this property if I decide that I want to see it and purchase it. So, or make an offer on it. That's number one. Number two is the buyer broker representation agreement, which is a longer term commitment. So this is the one that you're saying, hey, you know what? I'm really comfortable with you, Mr. Buyer Agent, Mrs. Buyer Agent. I want to go out and find a property using you. I want to agree to have a longer term commitment. Okay. So, you know, by California law, that commitment cannot exceed 90 days. That's the longest contract that the agent is allowed to sign with you. You can always extend it and have extensions, but 90 days is the max. So I always say start with number one, pardon me, go to number two if you're comfortable. So start with a single property, jump over to the other one when you're comfortable. So when selecting an agent, look for somebody who's going to advocate for you and negotiate on your behalf. So that's really important. Policies are always going to vary. I know with our team, we ensure that the seller pays the buyer commission in our negotiations. We stand behind that to make that happen. So we have a specific form to use for that, so there's no confusion. So hopefully that clarifies a lot of the things that come through there. We haven't seen any real changes or difficulties with it since it's happened. So again, it's just transparency and a way to make sure things are cleared out a little bit. So that explains that one. The next thing that I want to go to is kind of that whole process. I'm going to introduce Shannon here. I'm going to bring Shannon up on stage with us. Hello, Shannon.
Hi.
All right. She's going to go through the process of what it's like to buy a house. What's the process look like? You know, what steps do you have to go through? What's going to happen at the different phases of buying a home? And I'm sure there's a lot of questions that will come out of this, and there's always going to be more later, but it's pretty in-depth. So let me pop this screen up here, right here, and Shannon, take it away.
Thank you, Keith. I'm going to start with your agent should definitely be holding your hand through this whole process from start to finish, and we do with our clients as well. So I'm just going to hop right in. And we're going to start with interviewing multiple realtors. Yes, a few. We always recommend that because not all realtors are created the same. There's different levels of service and knowledge and experience that really can vary widely. So it's so important to do your best to find someone that you trust. Even if you have a friend in real estate, interview at least one other full-time realtor so you at least have a comparison. It is one of the largest purchases that you'll probably ever make. So it's important to be sure you have someone that's really protecting your interests. That next step is going to be the loan pre-approval. Again, speak with multiple lenders, and we have great lenders that we work with that we always refer to our buyers from different types of banks to understand what products are going to be the best fit for your situation and your down payment. This is more than just a pre-qualification letter. A pre-approval means that this is a question that came up in the chat. A pre-approval means that you've submitted all those required documents from your lender for them to review. And then you get that pre-approval letter. One step further than that is the underwritten approval. And that's where the underwriter has already reviewed the file as well. And an underwritten approval is actually the strongest form of approval that you can have. It looks really, really good to a listing agent when they're reviewing a bunch of other offers. If you potentially are the only underwritten one, you could be less risk for them. Next is your wants and needs. You want to make sure that you put one of these together with your partner if you're buying one with somebody else. And then the fun part is to start touring homes. Go to open houses, tour with your agent, and really just envision yourself living in spaces of the homes that you visit. And next is making the offer. So you found the home, it stands out amongst all the rest, and you can really see yourself living here long-term. So then that due diligence begins. So we're going to hop down to due diligence, and we're kind of going to do a little bit of a circle here because they can sometimes go in a little bit different of an order. But sometimes here in the Bay Area, we are in competitive offer scenarios where we must do our due diligence before submitting an offer on a home, where we're reviewing the inspections and the reports with a fine-tooth comb with our clients to make sure that you really understand everything going on with the property and then make the offer accordingly, potentially without contingencies and sometimes with, depending. But next, your offer is accepted. Now, this can be anywhere from a day to sometimes 2 days, depending on if there are counter offers going on after your offer is submitted. But once we have an accepted, ratified contract, meaning both buyer and seller have signed, we are going to smile and do a little celebration dance because you're one step closer. But this is a step where you're probably going to feel really nervous and you're going to be like, what the heck did I just do? And all these emotions are completely normal, but it's important to remind yourself of that long-term goal. And that is finally getting yourself into a home in a prestigious area like Silicon Valley. Next is the initial deposit. So the next day, or generally within 1 to 3 business days of the offer acceptance, 3% of that purchase price, generally 3%, is sent via wire or a cashier's check dropped off at escrow in person. And that's 3% of your down payment, not 3% on top of your down payment. So we're going to circle back to due diligence here because if we had contingencies in our offer, then this is the time that we complete the rest of our due diligence. At this time, we have maybe inspections that we might be doing on our own if the seller did not provide them. We're going through seller's disclosures if there's new stuff that they've given us. We're shopping for home insurance at this time and then reviewing anything to do like with HOA policies and all those documents if there's an HOA involved, and finishing up our due diligence there. Then we're going to hop to the appraisal. So once the offer is accepted, that lender is going to order an appraisal. And they do this because they want to make sure the home is in fact worth what you offered for it. In the case that the appraisal comes in lower than the purchase price, you have the option, a couple different options. You can either renegotiate the price, pay the difference, or back out of the deal altogether if you're within your appraisal contingency period. Next is the loan approval. So at all this time, this has been going on. The lender's been in the background, hard at work getting your file approved by the underwriter, if it hasn't been already. And your loan's full approval is definitely a milestone to celebrate. Next is contingencies. If you have any contingencies, they're likely going to be removed by day 14, definitely by day 17, usually so much earlier than that here in the Bay Area. And this full contingency removal day is known as the no turning back point, because if you cancel that contract to purchase this home for any reason, the seller does have rights to your 3% deposit. So we want to make sure that we understand those contingencies before even offering. And next is utilities. So we're going to schedule those utilities to transfer over to your new address. So you got water, electricity, internet, trash service, all within that first week of moving in. Being proactive about it really is going to help save you a lot of stress when you're in the midst of moving and you're like day one of move-in. Next is the final walkthrough. We're getting toward the end here. And this all this stuff is usually within the last 1 week before closing day. You're going to schedule that final walkthrough with your agent. They're probably going to reach out to you and find a time. And you'll walk through the home this one last time before closing to ensure that it's actually in the same condition that you saw it in before when you viewed it. You want to make sure, like stagers didn't put any new damage in the wall during like destaging process. You want to make sure any repairs that you maybe negotiated early on were actually done. But this is not a time to ask for new repairs for things that were already there. And it's definitely not a contingency to back out. However, if you do find something that's new, you potentially could hold off closing until an agreement is reached with the seller to repair it. But more times than not, it's usually a time to celebrate and see the home one last time before it's officially yours. Next is the sign-off. So the sign-off is done in person, either at the title office or with a mobile notary. They can sometimes come directly to your house. You're going to wet sign all of those final loan and title documents for the sale. Don't forget to bring your ID to this appointment, any parties who are signing. Next is the final deposit. This is often done the same day as the signing or the very next day. During the sign-off, you're going to get that final amount on your net sheet that's due. It's the remainder of your down payment funds minus that initial deposit. And you're going to go to the bank and make sure you wire it, or you can also drop off a check to that same escrow account as you did earlier for the deposit. And the last step is county recording. Escrow is going to confirm that they have received all of the documents, the funds from your down payment and from your lender. Once escrow is officially funded, they're going to send it off to the county to what we call record. And once your agent gets that confirmation email that the home is officially recorded, they're going to give you a call to congratulate you and set up a time to go exchange those keys and get your photo taken. This is definitely the most exciting part, because all of your patience and diligence and your hard work is going to start paying off for you in the form of home equity over the next several years to come.
Awesome, Shannon. I love it. You blasted through it, made it seem so simple in like less than 10 minutes. So I know with this timeline, we literally have sat down with future home buyers and taken an hour and a half to explain this process here. So you definitely got the abbreviated process. I know it looks like we had some comments coming in on other channels besides in here. So just a reminder, drop them in the comments right here for the presentation if you have any questions, and we're happy to jump on them through this. So Shannon, what do you think when you look at this timeline and you go through here? And sorry, I didn't prepare you for this question. So what do you think is where most home buyers have like the most confusion or the largest obstacle jumping in here?
Most buyers that have never purchased a property before are going to be most confused about disclosures, because it is a very large packet to go through. And I would say it's a red flag if your agent sends you the disclosures and says, here, take a look at these and let me know if you have any questions, because they're hundreds of pages long and there's so much to know about inspection reports, all three types of inspection reports. And for somebody that's never owned a home before, you don't really know what is a red flag versus it might look like a red flag to you, but it's nothing to worry about, or it's a $5 fix. So your agent is going to be able to kind of discern between those things when looking through all of those reports and make your offer accordingly.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. That brings a lot of insight. So well done, Shannon. We're going to see Shannon here in just a little bit again to give you a few tips on looking through different neighborhoods and Shannon, we appreciate that. I'm going to take you off a second. So thank you so much. The next thing that I wanted to drop in for you guys while we're hitting timeline is we usually have a lender that steps in at this point just to carry a couple things with you as far as what are the loan issues, what do you have to do, what's generally the steps and what's needed to get pre-approved for a house. So as it would be on this particular day, the three lenders that we have that usually come on here to speak are all on vacation. Every single one of them. So we're missing them today, which is okay. I'm going to give you a brief breakdown. I just want to specify that I am not a lender when I get this through, but we do have somebody that's going to do a little synopsis and give you some updates and insights in a video format that after the seminar is over, everybody that's here within the next 7 days, you'll get a follow-up from them with some information. So just to give you a couple quick tidbits, I'm going to go over this and then I'm going to go over negotiations before we bring Shannon back for evaluating properties. So the first thing that you're looking at when you're applying for a mortgage is your debt to income ratio. So usually what lenders are going to look at is 43%. That's the number that they're looking at for debt to income. They're going to start with your base salary. That's where it's going to go first. And then after base salary, they're going to look at bonuses and or RSUs. And those are usually going to be a 2-year history that you're going to be dealing with for bonuses and RSU that has to be consistent over that period of time. RSUs are going to vary. So they can be different in their calculations for max purchase price, depending on the financial institution that you use. So if you see somebody that's, one bank doesn't do what you think they could do, talk to another. So, because they offer various programs and different options out there for you. So down payment, you could really get as low as 5% in this area. Nationally, you can go like 3.5%. Around here, you could probably get about 5%. And if you want to avoid PITI, you want to go to 20%. With jumbos, you can actually get to 10% without PITI with certain banks that come through there. So, and that's the jumbo loan. Again, we'll give more information. If you have questions, we'll answer those, but I'll also have a lender clarify a lot of this with you later. Shannon touched on briefly, and I know we had a comment from Adam on here as well. So, and talked about the pre-qualification, pre-approval being underwritten. So there are 3 different things. So pre-qualification, that is basically you talk to a lender about how much you make, how much you owe, what you think your credit score is, and they're going to tell you this is probably what you can afford. So basically, it's just a conversation. It doesn't really carry any weight in your approval for a property. Pre-approval is that time frame where your credit is run. They check your credit. They go through everything. They have verified what your income is. They've gone through all of your debt to income ratio. If, again, you're using bonuses or RSUs. And from that information, they're saying, okay, based on all of this information that we've researched, this is what you can afford to purchase. So that's going to be one of our pieces there. And then the third one is going to be the underwritten approval. So this is the most powerful one that you have. And to be honest with you, it's the real deal. So regardless of what a lender that you might be talking to might say, the bank is going to give the final underwriting approval. And that's the gold. So that's the piece that it says, this is exactly what you can afford. This is what's going to happen. And it's the most powerful tool that you can have when you're making an offer. It's literally almost as good as having a cash offer if you have that underwritten approval. So that's something to keep in mind. So when you're selecting a lender, it literally is better to go to a branch or to get a referral from somebody that you can meet in person, a local lender. It's really important to do that, especially here in the Bay Area, because things are so different than they are nationwide. Over this time, I've seen a lot of people use or try to use lenders from out of the area, and they can't do it here because timeframes are different, qualifications are different. It's just a different animal. So it's just something to keep in mind. We do have great referrals. And again, as I said, we have a top lender that will follow up with everybody that was on here with information later within the next week or two. So you can have that and get your follow-up as well. So that's just my quick piece on pre-approval, since I'm not the lender and we don't have one here. So I'm going to jump into negotiations and have you understand this, because this is a big piece of what we're talking about. Everybody wants the best deal on getting a house, right? And or, they want to get the house if you're competing to come into there. So there's a couple important pieces in here: pricing, competition, motivators, and I really want to touch on counteroffers. So we're going to get to that as well. So the first thing that I want to say when it comes to negotiations and putting an offer on a property is that knowledge is power. The more you know, the better you're going to be able to negotiate. So agent to agent discussions are very different than agent to consumer discussions. And what that means is if the agent that's representing you as a buyer has a discussion with the agent that's representing the seller, there's different things that they can say to each other. And there's different things that are shared, more so than just walking into an open house and hearing what the agent has to say about what price they may have or what interest is there and so forth. So there's definitely a lot more power in that agent to agent discussion. So make sure that that's being had by the agent that's representing you. So some agents out there are quiet and some share too much. And so a lot of times you just have to feel that out, and a good agent will be able to know that when talking to somebody else. So you really have to listen to them too, and listen behind what they're saying. What's behind what they're saying? So a lot of times you'll hear vagueness when they share information or answer questions, the seller's agent or the agent at the open house, which a lot of times, by the way, the agent at the open house is not the actual seller's agent. So keep that in mind as well. They might not have all the information that you need. So, but do listen to what they're saying, because what's behind what they're saying is where the power is. And sometimes if there's a follow-up question or two or three, you're going to get more information than you would normally get. So that's an important piece in negotiations. The other part is pricing. A list price really doesn't mean anything. And we touched on this a little bit earlier when I was talking about market, but some homes are priced high, some are low, some are just right. So one of the things to look at is you can always see history of an agent. Zillow is a good place to go look at this. But you can go through and look at that seller's agent, and you can look at their history, and you can see what do their properties that they sell tend to do. Do they tend to sell higher? Do they tend to sell lower? How long do they stay in the market? So you can get a good feel. Some agents, again, will price them really low just to generate interest and get those things to push up. So overpriced listings. This is important. A lot of people avoid overpriced listings because they're overpriced, but those are usually where the deal is. Because if they were priced them correctly in the first place, they would usually sell at a higher price than when they price them wrong starting out of the gate, because they have to play catch up. They're on the market longer. They might do a price reduction, and that's where the deal comes in. Because the interesting thing about days on the market is the more days on the market, the more a consumer or a home buyer thinks there's something wrong with the property. And what's wrong with the property could just be that they started out priced too high. So there's a lot of deals to be had there. So pay attention to that. Overpriced listings can be a deal. Know what your competition is. This is another important piece. Ask questions. You don't know unless you ask. So how many offers are there? Who are the agents that are making offers? Again, see what their style is. Or a good experienced agent will know what other agent styles are and what they do and what kind of offers they write. So if you know your competition, ask the right questions, it helps you to put yourself in a better position if it's a home that you really want. Sellers' motivations, we'll get into there. This is a big key, because what's motivating the seller to make the decision to sell is an important aspect on what you want to put in your offer. And sometimes you can have trade-offs in the offer. So give and takes. Maybe the seller needs a rent back, which means that once the property closes, which is usually about 30 days or so after your accepted offer, they need to stay in the house for another 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month, right? If you're able to give that to them and somebody else isn't, and that's important to them, that might be a piece that helps you get the home or even get a better price than somebody else might be because of the flexibility. Same with the closing date. What's important there? The emotional aspects. Are there emotional aspects to the seller and what's important to them? And what might be a way that you can help them with that when you're making an offer? That's a critical piece to know. And then even like particular costs. There's both buyers and sellers have their closing costs when they buy a property, and making an offer where you're like, hey, you know what? I'll take on some of those costs for you, right? That might make them feel more comfortable coming through there as well. So they'll even sometimes look at like, wow, you're taking on those costs for me, or you're giving me a different price. There might be a convenience level there as well. the last piece that I would say with the seller's motivations is as is. There's a whole talk that we can give about as is purchases and what they really mean and what that is. We have a whole video. Again, if you go to our YouTube channel, you can see that there's a whole video on as is and the aspects there. So basically, as is just means that as a home buyer, you're purchasing the property in the condition it is, and you're not asking the sellers to make any repairs. You still get to do all your inspections. You still get to get all the reports and so forth. But for a lot of homeowners and sellers, the convenience factor of negotiating a price without having to do any work is powerful for them. They just don't have the time or the energy or effort to do the work in the first place. So again, that's another aspect that you can use to negotiate. So when you walk into that open house, which again, you don't have to sign a buyer agreement to do. We talked about that earlier. When you walk into the open house, play nice with the agent. So the agent's going to give you more information if you're nice to them. They're going to share more information on what the process might be, what the seller's expectations are, right? And put yourself in a position to make sure they remember who you are, right? Repeat your names, talk a little bit about your situation, your family, anything that will make you memorable to them, because then when the offers come in, they're going to be able to correlate a name to the offer that came in. So they're not going to just look at it as a piece of paper. They're going to look at it as a person, and they're going to be able to have a different discussion with the seller that, oh, I really like this person in the open house. I thought they were great, so on and so forth. The same will go with the buyer's agent. A lot of seller's agents are going to look at the buyer's agent as well and say the same thing. So always remember that when it comes into there. So counters, let's hit on the counters because this is the last piece that I wanted to talk about. First of all, if you do get into multiple offers, and again, there's a lot of opportunities out there right now where you don't have to deal with multiple offers, but you're still going to run into them in certain areas on certain properties. So know what your walkaway number is. And this is really important because a lot of people, when they have to compete to get a house, the competition is what scares them. They don't want to compete. So competition doesn't matter if you're only competing against yourself, right? When you're putting an offer in, if you know your walkaway number. So if you know, hey, I'm willing to pay X price and somebody is willing to pay $1 more than X price, that's fine. Let them have the property. All is good. But if you know that if you were willing to offer X price and you offered X minus, and you found out that somebody else got the house at X price, people are usually disappointed. So just know what that walkaway number is, know what it is going in with your offer. And if you're writing an offer, this is a big education piece that we've had to share a lot. If you're writing an offer, oftentimes people expect a counteroffer. We hear this time and time again. Well, I'm writing this offer because I'm expecting them to counter me. So I'm willing to pay higher, but I'm not going to because I know they're going to come back and ask for more anyways. And then I can, play my cards when that happens. So counteroffer is never a certainty. And I can't express this enough here in the Bay Area. Even if you walk into an open house and the seller's agent says, we're going to give counteroffers, even if they say that, even if your buyer's agent reaches out to the seller's agent and they say, oh, we're going to do counteroffers, right? It's always the seller's decision. It's not the agent's decision. So the seller may just say, well, I'd like this offer, so I don't want to counter everybody. I want it to be easy, so I don't want to counter anybody. This one just stands out. I don't want to counter anybody, right? I would say in the Bay Area today that 90% of the offers that are submitted, if there's more than one offer on the property, do not get a counteroffer. They just take that highest and best offer and they go from there. So, which actually leaves money on the table for the seller, but that's another story for another day. So you might get one shot and that may be it. Now, again, if you're the only offer, fantastic. Put an offer together, work on getting a counteroffer together. Just make sure that you're smart about what you offer so you don't just completely insult people and they don't want to deal with you. Believe it or not, sellers do get emotional about the home they live in and what they've done to it and things over time. So know your comparables, put your negotiation and go from there. And that's the best way to work with counters. So hopefully that gives some good insights because I love to negotiate. It's my absolute favorite thing to do. So let's get you on to our next piece and Shannon, I see that you're drinking water. I got you right at that time. So perfect timing to come through there. So I'm going to bring Shannon back in again, and we're going to go through the tips of identifying certain properties and evaluating neighborhoods and properties themselves. So Shannon, you are back in.
Yes, Keith, I wanted to touch on what you said before. I really liked how you mentioned being nice to agents when you're in open houses. It's so important. I remember getting an offer accepted one time because the agent hosting the open house remembered me, and she was like, I really liked your rapport and meeting your clients. And she's like, it's really a reason that the sellers wanted to go with you because of her communication of how we presented ourselves in the open house. So be nice to agents.
It's amazing how powerful that is, isn't it? Because, everybody thinks it's a logical decision, but for a lot of, home sellers and their agents as well, it's an emotional decision. Definitely. And so if there's that connection and that professionalism and, all of that, it goes a long way.
Definitely. Yeah.
Thank you, Shannon.
We are going to hop into evaluating properties, and we're going to hop right in for time's sake. And schools, obviously, in our area is going to be one of the biggest drivers of property value is the school district that a home falls in. The better the schools, usually the more desirable the home. There could be literally one street dividing a neighborhood that has two different high schools, for instance, and the homes could be vastly $200,000, $300,000 difference in values because of the school ratings and their desirability. So even if you don't have school-age children, it is good to know about this factor for resale purposes or even future rental purposes for that home. Next is the street location. Is the home on a through street? Is it a cul-de-sac? Is it at a stop sign intersection? Because those are going to be a lot more noisy when you have stop and go traffic at those locations. But you actually might save money on the purchase price depending on the market, how hot it is, of course, if you are okay with somewhere like a busy street. Which leads perfectly into noise nuisances. Don't just tour a home with your eyes, but close your eyes, listen. Are there planes, trains, or even like neighbors barking dogs? We can always refer to the disclosures where a seller might disclose these things, but after an owner has lived there for 10 plus years, sometimes 40 years, they're not going to even notice some of these things that you might consider a nuisance. Definitely check if there is a BART nearby. You're going to notice things like that, at least for the first few months that you live there until you get used to it. Next is views. Views can obviously affect a property's desirability. Views of the hills and mountains can mean a certain buyer might pay vastly more than what the comps are going for. So, and also remember to look for things on the other side of a nice view, like power lines, power towers, or be aware of the lack of views. Like if you're in a townhome community, open the windows if there's some closed so you can see if maybe you're staring right into your neighbor's living room or their kitchen or their bathroom. Next is walkability. Some might see a value in being walking distance to major amenities, whether you're keen on being far away from downtown life or closer to it. The walkability of places does matter. If you're okay with a further commute time, you might save money on purchasing a home on the outskirts of central downtown locations, but just know your preferences and then just set your search radiuses accordingly. So that leads me perfectly into commute times. I'm sure you noticed that the majority of tech companies are at the heart of Silicon Valley, like Sunnyvale, Mountain View, Santa Clara. And the closer that you get to these areas, usually the more expensive the homes get. So decide how far you're willing to commute to work and then draw your search radius. And I recommend that my buyers actually drive the commute to work at the times of week and times of day that they're going to be going to and from, so they can get a feel for the drive time that they're going to be living with for at least the next several years, probably. Future developments. So this is a big one. City websites are a great resource to find what permits have been filed in certain cities for projects that are still in the planning phases, but you may not see that they're popping up when you're there physically. This can help you decide if it might help or maybe hurt future property values long-term, depending on what's going in the area. It's usually going to help your home value if it's projects like parks or schools or churches, community centers. Maybe they have plans for government or industrial sites. That's going to be a different story. But city websites are far underrated. Definitely check them out. Next is types of lots. So sizes and usability of lots can widely vary, and it's super important to pay attention to the topography of it, not just the square footage. A 15,000 square foot lot, it might not be twice as desirable as a 7,500 square foot lot if it's on a large hillside with less than half of it being actual usable space. And then the shape of it is important as well if you're maybe considering building an addition or an ADU in the future. So in the disclosures, there's usually a plot map somewhere where you can see an aerial view of the exact shape of the lot. So those are usually helpful. Next is hazard zoning. This can affect your property insurance if you are in high risk zones. There's a document in the disclosures called the NHD that details where a certain property falls. You have earthquake zones, fire zones, and flood zones. So there's certain ones on there that may increase your insurance. And then property facing. This is a big one for some cultures that practice things like Vastu or Feng Shui. The property direction or facing, it can affect value, but not so much during a really competitive market like we see here in the Bay Area a lot. But it is possible that it could pose some opportunity for buyers if you're okay with a property facing in any direction. Just like if you're okay with a property on a busy street, you could save money on the purchase. Next is nicest home on the block. It's not always the best plan. Being the worst house on a block in a really good area might actually be better in some cases for value, because all of the bigger, more upgraded homes around it actually bring up the land value that it's on. So value is not always about the structure itself. Remember, the land itself holds value in itself, depending on location. So yeah, the main value of the property is not always in the materials of the structure, but the land that it's on. And this is one of the driving forces here in our area of all of the major appreciation, because the lack of new land to build on. And we know with low supply and consistent demand, like we see here in our area, prices either stay stable or they move upwards a lot of the time. Next is multi-units. Consider, when you're touring homes, drive up and down, not just the street that the home is on, but the parallel streets around it as well. Because if there's any clusters of multifamily living, think like duplexes and triplexes or small apartment buildings nearby that have a really high concentration of renters in that area, that can also affect home values over time as well. The less rental turnover an area has, generally, the better it is long term. If you think about it, you have more people that own their homes in the area. You have more pride of ownership, and people tend to keep their neighborhoods better and upkept over time than a neighborhood of renters. All right, next is an important one, and things to consider here is cost of upgrades when you're touring homes. Consider upgrades and this is the key part, be realistic. A good agent is going to be able to ballpark cost of floors, of kitchen and bath remodels, and costs of those new appliances that maybe aren't there when you tour it. It's really easy for buyers to overestimate the cost of like even minor fixes and repairs and completely pass up like really good homes because they just don't know the realistic costs associated with doing simple projects. And again, agents are not contractors, but because we've worked with a lot of buyers and gone through things like remodels and overseen things like this, we can usually ballpark what things cost. But always talk to several contractors because costs can definitely vary with cost of labor and materials going up right now. And then you want to talk to the neighbors. This is the best way to find out the actual truth about a neighborhood. I've knocked on the doors of either side of home buyers when we're out there before we make an offer and found out some very interesting things about the neighborhood that we just wouldn't have known otherwise if we did not talk to those neighbors. And next is due diligence. We talked a little bit about this before, but we're going to reiterate because it's so important. Be sure to review all the disclosures, the reports, and the documents before before making your offer, especially with a non-contingent offer. If there's no inspections provided up front, you definitely want to get an inspection, even on new construction. And we've got all the references and trusted inspectors that we've worked with for years. So rest assured, you don't have to guess who you're working with. Some parting thoughts before we go to the next slide here is just remember when you're looking at your wants and needs checklist, right, for a property, and it's checking all of your boxes and you're like, oh my gosh, this is the perfect home. Chances are that it's probably checking a lot of other people's boxes as well that are looking at it. So if you love the home, you're going to be comfortable with the mortgage payment, make an offer, make your best offer, because that closing price is now going to be the new benchmark for that size home in that neighborhood. And maybe that next home that comes to the market is going to sell for even more. So in our area, you want to get in when you can, lock your rate, and then watch your values rise over the many years to come.
Hey, Shannon, that was so informative. So much good stuff on there. Wow. So much to cover. It's amazing how much actually affects outside of the four walls that you have in the house. So very, very cool. The due diligence that you hit on. Wow. That's so powerful. The horror stories that I've heard from homeowners that I met after they owned a home about a lack of reviewing disclosures or inspections beforehand and the problems that they had because they were competing in a multiple offer. They didn't review everything. The agent they worked with didn't review anything. Thank you for sharing that, because it's one of the most powerful things that you can have for sure. And that talking to neighbors, all the things that you learn. So talking to neighbors, so powerful. A tidbit I'd give in there, know if the neighbor is a homeowner or a renter, because they have different points of view about the neighborhoods and the properties as well. So homeowners are going to give you a more thorough view from somebody that owns a home in the neighborhood. So as opposed to renters, sometimes are going to be a little bit more, I don't want to use the term exaggerating, but you're going to see a few more different things and a little more negativity that comes out of there. Getting negativity from a homeowner is a better insight into the neighborhood, as well as the positivity as well.
Yeah, I want to say one more thing too about the due diligence, because it's important, and it is a lot to review. It can take some time. Sometimes my disclosures calls with buyers before they make an offer can be like an hour and a half. You know, it's a long call. So not waiting until the day before the offers are due to review all of these disclosures is important. So leave yourself as much time before, if there is a deadline, to review. And then say you find something in there and maybe you want to go ask a contractor what certain things will cost. You leave yourself a little bit of a buffer so you don't feel like you're rushing to get your offer submitted, and then you might have missed things in the reports.
Yeah, that's a great advice. Or even call the inspectors too, right? What did you mean by this, right? Can you give me more insight on that? Because there's certain things they might tell you as the home buyer or the agent that might not have shown up in that report. So, so that's excellent. Thank you, Shannon. That's very, very good. So great stuff in evaluating properties coming through there. And we're doing great on time. We're going to get you in under that hour and 15 minutes. I have one more thing to talk about, and then we're going to share a little bit of information about upcoming stuff, any other Q&A, and how you can find out more information about all of this as well. So thank you, Shannon. You've been fantastic. I appreciate it. Let's jump into the common mistakes. Man, these are great, and these are a huge learning process. You know, I'd always joke through my time and through my career, one of the things that's given me a lot of wisdom and helped me make great choices in my career is all the mistakes that I made when I was younger. So all the stuff that I learned in that process. So let's go through this and talk about a lot of the mistakes and what's on there. So I'm going to minimize myself a little bit so you can see these over here. And I want to kind of jump through these. So some of these you may have heard already today when we're explaining stuff, but I do want to get into a few of them, what we have here. So I'm going to go a little bit out of order from what we're seeing over here and come through here. The first thing that I want to talk about is not interviewing multiple agents or looking at houses before taking this step. So sitting down and talking to multiple agents, interviewing multiple agents, you should be interviewing them, which is important. How do they match you? What do they know about what you're looking for? How's the feel, right? You're going to work with these people for the next few months. So how do you feel about them? How do you connect? How do you feel about their negotiation skills? How do you feel about their experience and their history? What have they done, right? You should have a list of questions that you ask them and you prepare for. So don't just jump in with the first agent you see or meet, because there's so much variance between what agents do, what their knowledge is, and what they have to offer. All they all have to do is pass a test. So one test that really doesn't do much as far as the experience that goes in real estate. So make sure you do that. Plus, it's easier to look at houses when you have the right agent, especially now, because at this point in time, when you're doing that, you have to sign a contract to go look at houses with an agent, as long as it's being done legally, just so you're aware. If an agent is showing you homes without a signed contract, they actually could get in a lot of trouble for that. So the second thing that I want to talk about is making large purchases. When you're buying a home, don't go out and buy a new car. So don't take on a student loan or co-sign on a student loan for somebody, right? So make sure you're avoiding those large purchases in the process, because it will dramatically affect your credit score. And if you do it after you're under contract for a home, it could affect your ability to get the loan, even though you've already removed that loan contingency or whatever the case may be. I have a story when I first started in this business way back in like 1998. But when I first started way back then, going through here, I had a client that I was working with, first time home buyer. We were looking at condos in Mountain View, as a matter of fact, and we're looking through there. And they were just qualifying with an FHA loan, like 10% down, just being able to get into the market barely. And it was problematic in trying to help this individual get a home. And I remember that they drove up to one of our showings after working with them about 3 months in a brand new car. So I was like, oh no. So what are you doing? Sure enough, hurt his qualification chances, wasn't able to, get the property that he wanted anymore, could still buy, but was kind of going in and out. It's actually one of the very first clients I stopped working with just because of what was being done. But don't make those large purchases. Don't do that. That's tough. Also, make sure you understand your budget when you buy a home. And this is absolutely critical. The purchase price, of course, is important, but that monthly expense and your comfort level with that budget is the most important piece. So what's your budget after you put in your down payment? How much do you have in reserves after you put in your down payment? Understand that it's not just your down payment. If you're putting 20% down, let's just use like a $2 million number, you're putting $400,000 down. That's not your only cost. You're also going to have title fees, escrow fees, realtor fees, inspection fees, appraisal fees. There's all of these other pieces that come together. And then you have to go think about your property taxes, right, that come into there. What's your interest rate? Is it fluctuating? How does that affect things, right? What are your utilities going to be every month, right? All of these pieces are your budget. So know your budget before jumping in and make sure you're comfortable with that monthly fee that you're going into. That's critical. The homeowner's insurance, right? Didn't mention that, so we'll get into that again. But again, that's part of your budget, and insurance it differentiates quite a bit right now. So the other piece is not getting pre-approved. We talked about that a couple times on here. We talked about pre-approvals, but this piece for getting pre-approved is critical, and it's going to be what you need to make an offer in the first place. But the most important part about getting pre-approved, one, if you find the property you like, you can write an offer. Otherwise, I've seen people miss on houses they liked because they didn't get pre-approved ahead of time. Also, it really gives you clarity as to what you can afford, because sometimes you'll find out that actually you can afford more and stay within your budget than you thought, or you could afford less to stay within your budget than you thought. And one of the things I've seen about that less side is when you go look at homes and you find out that you can find a home, or you can only afford a home that's, $500,000 less, as an example, you never find a house that you like anymore because you saw all of those other homes and you're comparing all those other homes to what you wanted. So understand that pre-approval is critical. Closing costs, we talked about that in that concept of, knowing the budget. So know that there's other costs on top of the down payment, and they could be anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 in the Bay Area to close on top of your down payment. So keep that in mind. Shannon brought this last one home on due diligence, and it really is one of the biggest mistakes that we made. And it's not reviewing the disclosures. Or if you're buying in a condo or townhome project, the homeowners association documents, because there's some particular rules in there that could affect your loan. It can affect what you really want to do to the place. It can affect where you park. It can affect what pets you can have, all of those. And or with those disclosures, not having the proper inspections. When you purchase a home, you should have a property inspection. You should have a pest inspection, termites, etc. If it's a single family home, definitely a roof inspection. You might need a chimney inspection, right? There could be soil testing depending on where the property is located at. So just make sure that you're getting the proper inspections and knowing everything. I can tell you that if you get all the inspections, there is definitely a cost associated with it. And it might be $1,000 to $2,000, depending on the property you're buying. It's going to be the best peace of mind that you can spend, because having a good inspector go in there, taking a look at things, helping you understand what the items are with the property that are addressable, that you can fix, what it's going to take to fix them, or the things that you might need to walk away from because it might be a bigger problem than you thought it was. So having those right inspections are critical. So I can't stress that one enough. And I know Shannon already talked about it as well. Shannon touched on this too, the cost of upgrades, not understanding the cost of upgrades or overestimating them. I see that all the time. Well, it's going to cost me $150,000 to redo this kitchen, so I'm going to offer, $150,000 less for the house, right, than it would be. Make sure you have a good idea. A good realtor can give you an idea on the area, what they're going to cost. And of course, can always get bids from contractors. Even if you have a realtor that has connections to contractors, they can give you a ballpark, even just over the phone by looking at pictures as to what it might take to do that. So understand the cost of upgrades that it's going to do. The non-contingent offers, again, I won't stress this enough, and it's going to go back into due diligence and researching everything. But a lot of people don't understand the risk of a non-contingent offer. So if you're in multiple offers, and usually if there's 3 or 4 offers, the winning offer is going to be a non-contingent offer. Understand, that means that once you put your deposit in, and by the way, if you make a non-contingent offer, you are required to put your deposit in, whether you put it in or not, you're on the hook for it. So when you put that deposit in, which is usually 3% of your purchase price from the beginning, and something happens, you lose your job, the property doesn't appraise, you find out something about the foundation that wasn't in the original stuff, you can lose your deposit. Like, it's gone. That entire 3% is gone. $2 million purchase, that's $60,000 that you decided to throw away, right? So understand what the risks are for non-contingent offers and make sure that you're making an educated decision to make that risk when it comes down to it. Sometimes you're going to have to make a non-contingent offer. Know what that means going in and understand what the risks are. Really, 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 really important. A new one probably over the last year is insurance. I talked about that as one of your closing costs. Some people shop for insurance too late. They have 30 days once their offer is accepted to close. That's typical. And on day 25, they try to get insurance. Insurance is difficult. There's several insurance carriers that have left California and they will no longer insure in California. Some costs have changed. Prices have gone up on certain things. They won't cover certain things. So from the get-go, the moment that you get your offer accepted, start looking for insurance. So start getting quotes, start getting an idea of what they are. That's important. Last 2 pieces that I want to hit through here. This one's fun. In negotiations, when you're trying to get an offer accepted, even if you're the only offer or multiple offers, whatever it is, one common strategy I see is people trying to nickel and dime in negotiations. They start to barter over $2,000 or $5,000 on a $2 million house, right? I know we don't want to spend money we don't want to spend. I get that. I'm of the same belief. But understand that may cost you the house. So that might be the straw that the seller gets emotional about, doesn't appreciate, whatever it is, and you're trying to fight over that $2,000 and the seller walks away and won't work with you anymore. Or it's funny how this happens. While you're countering and you're the only person, the only offer in, an astute seller's agent is talking to everybody else that was interested, talking to all the other agents, all the people that came into their open house. And lo and behold, they bring another offer in while you're countering, and that other offer gets accepted even at your price or even lower because the seller was frustrated with the small nickel and dime negotiation, right? I'm not saying throw all the money to them, but I'm saying be smart about those negotiations and what the house is worth to you. And if that $2,000 is the difference, than it is for you, but understand the next house is using that house as a comparable. And when you have a flat or appreciating market, usually the next house is going to go right around there or higher. And so you may have lost money because you did that barter. So I've seen too many people do that and lose out really on the house that they wanted afterwards too. They go back and go, oh man, I should have offered that extra $5,000 to get that house because that was the house we really wanted. So so keep that in mind. And then the last one. This is going to go very strongly with what we're seeing right now, because again, if you're paying attention to the market and the underlying fundamentals of the housing market is still strong and secure. We are not crashing. We're not seeing a correction. We're just seeing what we normally see in Silicon Valley during this time, and we're holding steady. We see people right now looking for a deal, often a killer deal, or waiting it out and just sitting on the sidelines. And this is one part. If the time's not right for you, it's not right for you. So that's one thing I want to stress. But if you're looking and you really want to get a house right now and you're looking for a deal, doing this for 30 years in Silicon Valley, the deal in Silicon Valley is getting the house. That's the deal. You got the house. Congratulations. It's really hard to get a house in Silicon Valley. So, and the competition is tough and there's very low inventory. So you don't see a lot of stuff come on. So oftentimes when people are looking for a deal or waiting it out, they lose out. And I've seen people that were wonderful people. They waited for a deal and they got priced out of the market. So they never bought a house. And so they never got the appreciation. They never got in where they wanted to get in. So, so the deal is getting a house in Silicon Valley. That's really the key. Now, again, there's some opportunities out there right now. So, and, take advantage of those, just be smart about it. But I've been doing this for a long time and I'm a student of the market. The market's not crashing. There's nothing showing that the market's going to crash. There's no data for that. So don't wait for it. It's not going to happen. You'll hear a lot of other real estate experts out there say the same thing. So that's a big piece that I wanted to share. I am going to bring Shannon back in here real quick and say, hey, we made it. We made it with 3 minutes to spare, Shannon. So nice job. So coming through. Thank you again for everything. We have a couple events. If you appreciated this information and if you think it would be good for somebody else, please share it. We have a next buyer workshop like this is coming up on Thursday, October 2nd. We do them every quarter. So that's available. Share that out there. Put it out there with people. There's the website for it. And then there's also a seller workshop on October 4th. There's also a seller workshop this Saturday at 10 a.m. in person here at our Cupertino office, also online as well. All you got to go there to the website, and that'll take you to the information. The other piece here is check out our YouTube. Just scan that little code right there. We have consistent content on here about the market and tips for buyers and tips for sellers and insights, a lot of things that's going to be helpful. This YouTube channel is, we're almost 18,000 subscribers. It's growing every day. We have over 2.5 million views. The one thing that we're really proud of as a team and as educators in real estate is that we're the most viewed YouTube channel in Silicon Valley when it comes to real estate. So hop on there, jump in there and learn from everything that's there. And then again, if you want to connect with us, you want to follow us on all the different social media platforms, there it is. Scan that code and jump in there. I want to see if we have any Shannon stressing diligence on there. There you go. I love that. A few months had to replace an old sewer line that would have shown up in the inspection. Exactly. Telly, good share on there. That is so true. I've seen that time and time again. Sewer inspections they're uncommon, but there are signs that lead to them in a property inspection, which will say, hey, let's go get that sewer inspection. So that was a great one. Good piece to share on there. So thank you again, everybody. Appreciate all the people that have been viewing here. We look forward to seeing you next time. We'll follow up afterwards with the buyer guide, the lender information that we spoke about. And of course, we are here for any questions that you have. Just reach out to us. We're happy to help you all the way through the process. So thank you again, Shannon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.